All right, so as I shared with most of you guys while we're going over this and what training we're going to talk about. So right now we're going to jump right into it and we're going to talk about the goal. Basically, this is going to equip you as social workers so you know how to be inclusive in your practice. You know what to do, what's expected, how to handle certain questions when they pop up, and what to do when you're working with certain populations. So hopefully by the end of this training, you're going to recognize and be able to apply some essential LGBTQ plus and vulnerable population terms. You'll be able to navigate the first, next, best, most decision paths, like how do we handle confidentiality, microaggressions, repair, you know, all those microaggression repair. And we'll kind of talk about that a little bit here as well, but also like how do you utilize an interpreter and all those kind of things. So of course, we'll hit on a lot of these things that pop up all the time when we're actually just working with clients in general. Some things we take for granted and just don't pay attention to it, but it does pop up in everyday life. So we want to be able to help you avoid some of these things that show up and how to document things appropriately and all that good stuff. Microaggressions comes up a lot. And I know in every boot camp, I have someone define what microaggressions are and what they look like and how they present themselves. And some people have never heard of it before. And then some people are very familiar with it. Although I'm sure about 90% of us on this call have experienced some microaggression. We just didn't know what it was called or how to actually handle it. All right. So basically inclusion is not bringing people into what already exists. It's just making a new space a better place for them. So just think about that in general. We talk a lot about inclusion as it pertains to social work. So it's not really us just kind of saying, oh, come on, let's do it this way. It's kind of just being mindful of what that looks like and making a space so people of all backgrounds, all cultures, all genders and so forth feel comfortable and in a better space when they're in certain environments. All right, so we're going to go over some core terms. So I know some of you guys are going to go back and watch the replay, but if you have a pencil and paper, as I always say, make sure you get it out because there are going to be a lot of terms. I already know some of you are just going to take a screenshot of the picture when you don't have to, because obviously you're in the culture community. So you actually have a copy of the cheat sheet or some of the guides that I use here, and then you'll have access to this presentation that'll be uploaded. All right, so here goes some key terms to know. And if you know some of these terms and you're able to break it down, feel free. I'll definitely have you guys participate and share. Sexual orientation. Basically, that is the pattern of attraction. Like, who are you attracted to? Can anyone explain gender identity? What does that mean? Or how would you determine what that is when you're working with a client, their gender identity?
Yeah, that's more, to me, I think internal as far as how they see themselves, whether they see themselves as a male, female, or binary, but it's how they see themselves.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's perfect. That's exactly how they see themselves, because that might not be how you see them, or how when you see them physically, that might not be what you think of, but that is how they see themselves. So it's really important to understand that when it comes to gender identity. Gender expression, can someone explain what the difference is between expression versus identity?
I would say gender expression is how they choose to express their gender, and the identity would be how they identify. So one is how they express themselves and one is how they identify. So like a memory trick would be like an ID card, how you identify.
Okay.
And the expression is how I want to express myself.
Okay. So basically someone can identify as a male, but outwardly express themselves as a female, and just how they dress and how they do stuff. Good example. Okay. And cisgender, that is pretty much your identity matches whatever your sex is at birth. So whatever you were born with, that is pretty much what cisgender is. Transgender is the identity that differs from your sex at birth. So a trans male would be what at birth? What would they have been at birth?
What a female? If you're a trans man, you were a female and transitioned into a man.
Yeah. So if you're a trans male, what was your sex at birth?
Female.
Okay, got it. And if you're a trans female, then what would your sex have been at birth?
Male.
Yeah. So I think just when you guys are trying to understand it, some people have a really good understanding of these terms and concepts, but if you don't, the easiest way to remember is kind of like the trans is the opposite gender that they were born with is the gender that they're identifying themselves as. It just makes it easier to kind of memorize it in that context. What about non-binary?
It means you're neither gender.
Well, they don't identify as being a male or female. They just consider themselves as non-binary. So it's not like a label that they're putting on themselves in that category. And intersex. Say that again.
Don't they believe that there's more than two genders?
Yeah, I believe they feel like it's a continuum. Like you can fall along a continuum. I don't know it in that much depth. Like what are the different genders that they identify? I just know when people say non-binary, they're not putting a label or classification on their gender. It's pretty much they see beyond that. They don't really identify or see that someone can classify themselves as a male or female.
Non-binary is usually they don't identify as anything, not no sex or anything, like no male or female.
Yeah, they see beyond those aspects aspects and those terms that, you know, most people would look at. What about intersex?
You have both male and female reproductive, right?
Well, variance in the sexual traits, I think you're thinking of, but it's an actual thing when someone's born with both male and female parts, but it's not, I think it's like a hermaphrodite. I don't want to be incorrect. I don't want to say it incorrectly. I believe that's what
That's correct. Yeah.
That's the term, but for the actual, what we're looking at and how people identify, intersex is just like a natural variation in all different sex traits. So it's not anything specific. So these are pretty much terms that individuals in the LGBTQ plus population kind of identify and see themselves as. So when we're discussing this and when we're working with clients, we just want to have an understanding. If a client tells you I'm a trans male or I'm this, like, you understand what that term means and you're not oblivious, like, well, I don't know what it is. And if you don't understand what it is, what would you say? If you meet a client and they're using a certain term and you're not familiar with it, what do you do as a social worker?
I would ask, how would you like to be referred as? I guess, to be respectful.
Okay.
I guess, am I right or wrong? Or
Yeah, but I'm saying if they shared with you already how they want to identify and you're just unfamiliar with that term.
I
So
would
if they
ask-
say that I'm non-binary and you're like, whoa, I never heard that before. Like, how do you handle those situations?
I guess I would ask, but if I read their profile before they come in, I would do research, background, like to see research before I meet
Okay,
them.
okay,
Yeah.
that's good. That's good. All right, and two-spirit is indigenous gender identity. That's pretty much when we talk about indigenous, we're talking about other religions and classifications. Gwen, you said you'll ask them directly. I did see your comment. I'm sorry, I wasn't ignoring you. You said you'll ask them directly. That's a good way. Or if you see it ahead of time, you can ask for support. Yes, so when we think of indigenous people, we normally think of like Native Americans and people of different cultural backgrounds, but two-spirit, that term is actually an indigenous gender identity. That's kind of a term that's used. So you know the exam is focusing on a lot of cultural terms and cultural things. So you want to be familiar with different terms as they come up. Trudy?
Let's say if a client comes to you and they have that label on them, how would you confront them and stuff like that?
I'm not sure what you mean, because we don't confront a client. This is just how they identify. It's not our job.
How would you tell them to identify themselves?
Well, we don't tell them. They would tell us. We just have to be aware of what they're identifying themselves as, and as social workers, be knowledgeable about what that means. So that's why we're going over these terms and make sure you're familiar with it. So when a client tells you how they identify, you're aware and you know exactly what that means. Some exam cues and some common traps that trick people up. Using affirming name and pronouns. You never want to misgender or dead name. You never want to pathologize LGBTQ plus identity or treat as a phase. Like, oh, this is just something they're going through, or this just happened, maybe they'll change, or you don't want to have any judgment or any preconceived notions about why that person is doing a thing or acting a certain way or whatever it may be. So these are just cues and things you want to look out for if it comes up on an exam question and how to address it. You want to clarify with the client. You never want to assume based on their appearance. That is a huge one. Like, how do you identify? What are your pronouns? These are the things you want to get out and ask early. All right, here's a trap. Collecting SOGIE data. What is that? Does anybody know what SOGI or SOGIE data is? Without clear explanation or consent. That is an exam trap. But does anybody know what that is, what that term stands for, or what it means?
Do you mean like the information on like the gender and the orientation?
Mm-hmm. Like what it stands for, like sexual orientation, gender identity expression, like the term itself, SOGIE, that's what it stands for. So when you look at it, a lot of times I tell you guys use process of elimination, because we're talking about LGBTQ plus and vulnerable populations. And it's saying you don't want to, when you're collecting this data without clear explanation or consent, that is an exam trap. Like, you don't want to just collect this information without getting consent from them or having a clear explanation about what's going on. So when we're looking at the term, yes, you might want to write that down. Go ahead, Kiana. She getting out her pen and paper. Like, let me write this down. SOGIE, sexual orientation, gender identity expression. That is the term. So you guys, I'm sure you'll see it pop up and you're like, oh my God, Arisza did it again. I've never seen this term before. Now it's popping up everywhere. That's pretty much what happens when we're not familiar with something, don't see it. We're like, I've never seen that before. And we ignore it. And then we see it pop up like, wait, where'd that come from? All right. So moving on, let's talk about some minority stress and microaggressions. So this is another hot topic and things that come up a lot. Chronic stress from discrimination impacts an individual's well-being. Microaggressions are those subtle insults or invalidations. They must be named, they must be repaired, and it must be documented. So many clients, including us, we have dealt with some type of microaggression. Can someone give an example of a microaggression they might have faced at work or something that they have heard or experienced sometime in their life based on hearing this? It's the subtle insults or invalidations. That's what a microaggression is.
You want somebody to say
Yeah, you could
something?
just give us an example, maybe one that your client has shared their experience or one that you've experienced, just so people can understand what it sounds like or what a microaggression is.
I've experienced it from my boss that I had some years back. She would say insulting things when it came to finances. So if I drove a specific car, she would say, "Oh, I don't pay you enough for that car."
Okay.
And she would do it in front of the whole team.
Other people. Okay.
Mhm.
I can't with you, Tan. None of your business. That's Tan, in case you guys see the emoji keep popping up with the laughing emoji comment. She does all the commentary behind the video. So I have to hold it together because she's always like her emojis stop popping up and like whatever I'm thinking or saying. But you had one, Tan. Go ahead and share the microaggression you experienced.
I think a lot of black women have experienced I can't say all, but from in my community, the "you're so pretty for a Black girl," or "wow, you're really educated," or "wow, you speak well." Those are ones that I've
Those are really good
experienced.
ones. Okay. Yes, absolutely. A lot of thumbs up on that one. Guadalupe, we can't hear you. You're muted if you're coming off mute.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Uh-huh.
For microaggressions, when you see the word microaggressions, is it always accompanied with chronic stress? Like, does it have to be chronic in order for it to be considered a microaggression?
Oh, absolutely not. That's why they're giving examples of microaggressions.
Okay, so they're separate. So, like, if you see,
Yeah,
like,
it's just saying that
okay.
minority stress and
Okay.
microaggressions, they can cause chronic stress from having that discrimination against you, whether it's being discriminated because of you can't get a job or you can't find housing. That causes a lot of stress for our clients, and it impacts the
okay.
overall well-being as a whole. So it's just using that as it's just saying in general that's what happens when you're dealing with these type of things. It can cause a lot of chronic stress. So just so we're aware of what's going on with our clients when things like that happen. But for microaggressions, I was just defining it because a lot of people are not familiar with it. Lorenzo said you're not like the others.
Coach
Okay.
Arisza.
Okay. Renelle said, as a Black male, I hear comments about your body, and it's not showing me the whole thing. You're gonna have to say it, Renelle.
My body image.
Okay. So those are some of the things you've heard them all, and these are microaggressions. So a lot of people on here, you're like, I've had people say that before, or I've heard that, but not really knowing what it is. And it comes up a lot in workplaces, or it comes up in different places when it says subtle insults or invalidations. And I know we have a lot of people of color on the call, but I'm sure people from all walks of life have experienced some type of discrimination. But normally when you're looking at microaggressions, it's dealing with those of the Black and brown communities. They hear a lot of those type of microaggressions, like, oh, you're attracted to be dark skinned, or oh, you speak well because it is just those comments. It's like, like, where is that coming from? But you hear it so often. They're just those microaggressions that we just ignore and keep moving forward. But most people have heard them. So basically, being yourself is not a crime, but the world often makes you feel otherwise. So social work must counter that. So basically, when we counter something, we have to do the opposite. Our clients are dealing with this. These are things that they're faced with, but we have to let them know that it's okay to be who they are in the skin that they're in and empowering them. That's kind of where we come up with our strength-based approach and empowerment. And those are the things we do with our clients. All right, this is chosen family. We talked about this earlier in the slide about identifying and finding out who clients pick as their chosen family. So this is a support system defined by the client, not necessarily their biological or legal family members, but it's who they have identified as their actual support system. And they can be included in safety planning, communication, and releases as appropriate. So keep that in mind, because a lot of times we're fixated on, doing releases and getting information the way we're used to or trained to. But again, the world is changing, and we need to make sure that we're up to date with how we handle all situations and circumstances. And this is a huge one. All right, vulnerable population. So this is right here. I'm going to go over some terms, some exam gotchas, and some things. I know you guys love those buzzwords and cheat sheets and all that stuff. So we're going to talk about some of those terms. Some of these terms I was not too familiar with either in doing my research. I was like, I never heard of that one. Like LEP. Does anybody know what LEP means? So when you hear the term LEP, that needs language access or use pro interpreter. So just think about what it means in the cues. What do you think LEP would stand for? Anyone using process of elimination, just kind of seeing the cues and the means, what do you think?
I would just stop.
Something to do with English?
Limited English proficiency. That is pretty much it. It might be spelled all the way out, but that's limited English proficiency. And of course, I like you guys taking notes. So that's why I made it a little bit more, let me just keep this abbreviation right here so that you guys can take your notes or kind of remember. All right. Cultural humility. We talk a lot about that. That's ongoing learning. We have to be have to have cultural humility for sure. And then intersectionality, we talked a lot about that. Can someone, I know I got a lot of people on here that's been in the boot camp. What is intersectionality? Intersectionality, like what is that? Give us an example of it if you can't describe it.
Oh, it's where if you're part of one community and then the other community that you're a part of overlaps, like if you in an LGBTQ community, and how it overlaps with your ethnicity.
So what will be an example, like a Black transgender person, because they're dealing with two different backgrounds. They're dealing with the African American culture, and they're also dealing with the LGBT culture. So that's exactly what it is. It's kind of someone who's dealing with different types of identities that overlap, and there's multiple ones. So it's not just one; they have multiple ones that overlap with each other. And normally when they overlap, they're different risks, because you're not only dealing with how society sees you as your ethnicity, but then you're also seeing how they see you as your sexuality, and then you see how they deal with your religion. Those are all different things that you're dealing with and faced with. So that's what that means. So just think of just think of all those different, think of like a intersection, interstate, like it's all these different parts that are connecting, and that's kind of what this is. Intersectionality. Harm reduction, we talk a lot about that. That is reducing harm and meeting the client where they are. So that's clients that are using drugs. So remember, we're not just talking about LGBT, we're talking about vulnerable populations as well. So you have clients that are using a certain drug where they might use some harm reduction programs. Haley said clients said self-harm. Yep, these are all good ones. And that's a huge one. Clients that use needles and they're using drugs, meet them where they are. Like looking at them and trying to get them to change, and you don't do this and this is not right and that's going to hurt you, and meet them where they are. So they have harm reduction programs where they do like needle exchanges. So you would just recommend or refer them to certain things like that. So that's important to know. All right, guys, real quick. I'm always talking about the community, the LCSW vibes. We're leveling up. And this is the sneak peek of the community. As you can see, it's on and popping. We got a lot happening. I got ethics over here, human development, or study guides that you guys asked me about on the YouTube channels, all right there. Test questions. You just want to level up and learn and see if you can answer those questions. I'm testing your knowledge. Let me go back to the home screen. If you want to learn more about what services I offer and what other things are there, that is where you go to the learning tabs. We leveling up, so why don't you join so you can level up too? And then you have trauma-informed care. You want to avoid re-traumatizing. You want to promote safety. So it's a certain way we have to handle clients when they're dealing with trauma. We don't want to re-traumatize. So we go at their pace, and we're very mindful of what we say and what we start out and address in those sessions early on. That's a good one, Lorenzo. Clients receiving condoms is harm reduction. Absolutely. All right. What about SDOH? Social determinants define health opportunity. So that's pretty much what it is. Social determinants of health. That's pretty much what it stands. So you have to think about that. There's a lot of things that happen to people in certain communities and certain walks of life as it pertains to their health based on just the environment they live in. So these are all things that we're exposed to and that we see, but we just might not be that familiar with them. Let's see. Internalized partner violence. That is the IPV. That's a pattern of power and control. Like whenever clients are dealing with that, like domestic violence or some type of violence within that relationship, that's something that we have to be mindful of, that power and control dynamic. Human trafficking, I'm sure most of us have heard of that term. We also know refugee and asylum seeker. Those are also trauma-informed care and stuff that's utilized when working with those clients. Also understand the legal ramifications. I've seen that pop up a lot in test prep questions. I've actually went over quite a few of those with those that I'm doing private tutoring with. A lot of you had that question. I can't think of the question offhand now, but it's basically like is a new mandate, a report that comes out and says that anybody that is undocumented, you have to report them. As social workers, that's a fine line. Like that's not our job. Our job is to service the client and to be there for the client. It can be confusing where you're like, oh my God, well, legally I have to do this, but your job is to serve the client. They're your priority in that moment. All right. Always understand when mandated reporting, elderly independent abuse, very important. You must know when to report. These are all vulnerable populations. That's why they're all listed this way. It's not so much of we're talking about one topic. Yes, we touched upon that, but I want you to realize there are a lot of different vulnerable populations that we have to know how to address. And of course, you guys know HIPAA, and that's just protecting privacy. I hear some people off mute. We can hear your background, so if you can please mute. I just can't switch screens and for everyone. All right, here goes some common pitfalls that you got to be familiar with. This first one pops up a lot. When a client speaks another language or a client's unable to kind of understand what you're going over, using family and friends or minors as interpreters, what are we supposed to do actually?
Ask for an interpreter,
a professional interpreter. Absolutely. Waiting for proof before reporting abuse. That's a big one. So I want to stay on this one just a little bit longer because, of course, before we just automatically report abuse, we want to assess and see what's going on. But we don't have to go deep searching. If a client comes in and they got a bloody nose and they walk in your office and say, my dad gets really angry, he hit me or something, like we're not waiting to see the dad hit him or call the dad and say, hey, did you do this? That's enough, or we need to just act and report on that. So some things we just know when we need to do a thing and how we need to proceed. So I wanted you guys to understand that and kind of know what that means. All right, and let's see. Pressuring for proof. So if somebody said they've experienced some type of trauma, or maybe some microaggressions at work, or maybe they've been, abused, or felt like someone did something to them, pressuring them like, well, how did that happen? Or like, explain to me, or can you show me that they actually did that? Like, you don't want to do that when it comes to a client. You kind of want to hear where they are, meet them where they are in that moment. All right, and let's see. Individual point of view, defaulting to joint sessions in the context of an individual point of view. We don't really do that. A lot of times that's like if a client tells you something, you take it from their point of view and what they're doing. You don't need to bring the coworker, the spouse, or the family members and all of them in there to hear everybody's point of view. We don't need to do that. We kind of meet clients what they are. That's the easiest thing that I can get you guys to recognize and understand. And oversharing records with parents or school, that is a huge one. Parents actually asking for information or details about their kids' history, like, hey, has my kid reported to you that they're using drugs, or are they sexually active? Like, these are the things we have to be really mindful of what we share with clients. All right, so let's go over now some confidentiality terms, some things that we'll do. So the first thing, whenever we're dealing with the LGBTQ plus, and say someone's a minor at that, we always want to explain confidentiality limits, and we want to assess for risk. So if this child is 13 and they're sharing some things with you, we want to be mindful of the confidentiality limits. And a lot of states it's 14. Clients have the legal consent to be able to like seek treatment and do things without having a parent or guardian be aware and all those things, but it varies per state. But for the purpose of the exam, we want to be able to explain confidentiality limits when working with clients. We also want to assess to make sure there's no sexual abuse, there's no any type of abuse, and then also whether there's any homicidal or suicide ideations. Now, just to give you some context, you meet with a kid, you're meeting with a client, say they're 15 years old and they're telling you they're in a relationship with someone and they're sexually active. You would have to assess further just to make sure that if they're in a relationship with a 24-year-old, clearly that could be an abusive style relationship because they're way underage. So that is something that kind of puts you out of the realm where you have to kind of report and move forward. That's why it's so important to assess risk. You also want to clarify the state laws, which we talked about. Affirm identity. Let communication with the family happen at the individual's pace. So if they're like, hey, I'm not ready to tell my parents yet, I don't want to come out to them, I'm just sharing this with you, then you can't force it and say, I think it's really important. We need to let your parents, you work at their own pace. And then a most style question. You want to share information only with the release and only with safety needs. And remember, we document everything, because if we don't document what?
It didn't happen.
Yeah, absolutely. It did not happen.
Didn't happen, yeah.
For sure. So when we're dealing with microaggression repair, so this is what we talked about a little bit earlier, but I didn't go into detail. So when a staff misgenders or dead names. So I'm sure you guys might not have experienced it, but I'm sure some of you on this call have. And I'm sure if you haven't, maybe this can prevent you from doing it, but I'm sure it happens quite a bit where you're working with a client. Maybe they are transitioning in the process of you getting to know them, and maybe you're used to calling them by the name they were born with. And that's a mistake. So what does it tell us? Briefly acknowledge the harm and apologize. If it's a next style question, we normally would ask the client, like, what do you do next? Or if it's a style question like that, you'll ask the client, what is their preferred name? What are their pronouns moving forward? Like, how do they want to be addressed? You always want to update EMR. What is EMR? It can be used different terms, but when I put EMR here, does anybody know what that stands for or what that is?
Is that the medical record number?
Absolutely. Yep. So that is pretty much, you want to make sure it's updated. So your system should be updated where, like, for instance, in my private practice, when it says gender, like, it should have other options on it where it's not just male or female. Or it should ask the clients in the documentation, what are their preferred pronouns? So it's automatic that the therapist knows to ask that and to go over that information. So that's why it's really important to have updated information. You want to model correct language, and you want to coach the people who you work with, whether it's your staff, and because a lot of you guys are working towards your LMSW and LCSW, so you're going to be in supervisory roles. So you want to definitely make sure you're coaching and training the people around you to know how to do that. And always updating policies and procedures to make sure it helps so these microaggression things don't happen often. Right? When dealing with interpreters, we always offer a professional interpreter, and we also want to get consent, of course. We also want to brief the interpreter, whoever's going to be doing interpretation of the session and what's happening, on confidentiality. Like, they know their role, what we're going to be discussing, they kind of have an idea of that. You also want to speak to the client, not through the interpreter. You want to kind of make sure the client understands that, hey, due to the language barrier, I'm going to have someone else join and they're going to be interpreting the sessions and so forth. Like, making sure there's some understanding that the client can get, or they have some kind of awareness of what's getting ready to take place. All right. And then you want to document the language used, the interpreted details, and make sure you have comprehensive details on what took place and how that process worked for you guys. All right, so here are some high yield topics and things that come up that kind of stress people or they don't recognize them when they show up on the exam. So I want you guys to briefly look at this. But yep, so these are some terms, guys. Make sure, let me know if you have any questions about this slide or anything. Go ahead, Cynthia.
Well, I work with adolescents, right? So this actually happened with me real quickly. Just the parents came and they came for a family session and I acknowledged one of the parents. So should I have, or should that be documented in the kids file if the parents have a preference? So, you can make sure that I acknowledge them correctly, or is that only for the client?
Well, for one, you want to check with your agency because the test is not going to ask you something that detailed about the other client, but just for what I would do is I would document this therapist met with Jonathan and his parents, his mom identifies as father identified as, like if I'm documenting just so I know that for future reference and whoever, maybe somebody else is going to be working a chart, or maybe if you have a supervisor, say you're working towards your LC or working towards your LM and you have a supervisor that's reading your notes, and they're doing maybe a QA call and they're calling to speak to the parents of so and so to see if they had any questions or understand the process and if things went smoothly with their child. Whatever it is, you want to make sure that they don't make the same mistakes. So I would definitely have it documented somewhere. If a question presents itself in exam, I would have to think about how the question might present itself. So if you're seeing an 11-year-old client, they report being sexually active, their parents are adamant about seeing their charts, what should the social worker do first, or what should they do next? Whatever style question it is. It might have some options in it. Do you release the information because the child is of a minor consent? Do you tell the parents you're unable to share the information because this information is confidential? Do you check with your state mandate to see what considered the blah, 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 like the age of consent or whatever you can, or seek supervision? That's probably likely in the same one because both of those would be probably the right answer where you're going to seek your state requirements and you're also going to seek supervision. So it's probably going to be worded that way if a question was to pop up pertaining to that, because again, it's not trying to trick you up, because in California it might say one thing, New York it might say another, Virginia might say another, and we're talking about the age and someone being sexually active and consent to records. So that's a little bit out of the context of just us in social work. So just to kind of bring that full circle, I'm always thinking 14 because I know it's in my state is 14, but again, this test is of course 40 something other states. So I'm sure in that case, we would want to look at the state. And if it doesn't give that option, then obviously you're going to be seeking supervision. And your supervisor's just going to do the same thing, kind of look at the records and see what the mandate is in that state and what's required and so forth. So either one of those would be the answer that I would lean towards.
Thank you.
No problem. And I did see a few people hands go up and a few people hands go down. So I don't know if Tiffany, was that clear? Because I know you asked too. So I just want to see if that question came up. Do you feel like you would be comfortable in answering it based on what I shared, or are you still a little confused about that part?
Yeah, that clarified it. Basically, the way that you worded it, if it is worded in a sense of going back to supervision or looking at your state regulations, that's the direction you want to go in, because that's probably the best.
And that's a tricky one. 11 years old, having sex in the state, the parents want records and stuff. I mean, that was a really good question, because it could, but in the case that, it could pop up there, it seems a little like it'd be pushing it a little bit and could be stressful and getting people a little, freaking out a little bit, like how do they answer it? But obviously those would be the best two options. So pretty much when we get questions and we're not sure about how to handle it, we always got to think about it from the lens of what is likely the correct answer choice to pick from if given that opportunity. It definitely wouldn't be to share the records with the parents, or at 11 years old, that's really young, I'm thinking. So I can't see it being decline the parents of that's kind of tough, because at 11, the parents are the ones that probably consent and did all the paperwork anyway. So technically, it wouldn't be one of those two options. It would have to be something where you're seeking supervision and looking at the state, for sure. Did someone else come off mute or comment?
I just wanted to say that what if and asking this because it came up and I'm still struggling with it. What if the parents are not together? Nobody's ever been.
It's whoever has legal custody of the child. So we don't want to get too deep in all the different scenarios. It's just whoever has legal custody of the child. Because if the mom and dad are not together, they got 50-50 custody, and then both of them are legal parents. If maybe the mom has custody or the dad has custody and the other parent doesn't, whoever is the legal custodian of that child, that doesn't change.
Gotcha.
That part does not change.
Hey guys, I stopped by to tell you this. You do not have to win alone. Absolutely not. People in the community are winning each and every day. The proof is in the pudding. Go Go in the community. It's free. We're throwing down test questions, case studies, the FNBM method, all the details and everything you need so you can succeed. Click the link in the bio and join. You don't need to do this alone. See you soon.
All right, so when looking at LGBTQ plus and vulnerable population terms, you want to practice confidentiality and documentation and scenarios. You want to ask, like, what's the right step with a transgender teen and their parents? So like if you have a transgender teen and they're coming out or they're sharing certain things, like what is the thing to do with their parents? It kind of leads back to what we're discussing. If the transgender teen is not ready to share that with their parents, then you have to respect that. If they feel comfortable coming out, but they want you in the presence, so to be a part of that, then you have to consider that. So you got to really go back to what is it that person wants, like what would be in the best interest of that client, the one you're servicing. If you identify someone wrong, like staff debt names and notes, that needs to be corrected. It needs to be documented. It needs to be addressed. You don't want to just say, oh, well, they used to go by Timmy, so it's fine. I'll just correct it next time. You want to be mindful of that and fix it in the moment. Interpreter present, you definitely need to document that. It says, what do you document? We talked about in the other slides. You want to document who, the purpose, and also that they filled out a confidentiality form. So you want to be mindful of that. Now, I do want to do the questions. We're going to probably do them together. Affirm LGBT and vulnerable populations in every interaction. We want to use first, next, best, most decision paths when we're trying to decide what do we do first or next and what's the most appropriate or the best thing to do. You want to watch out for exam traps. So you want to think before you click the answer and move forward. So really think through when we're doing these type of questions. All right, and let's see, let's move on to, I'm going to share my screen with the questions really quickly. Some of you might have to jump off because it's 5:30, so we just hit the hour mark. If you have to jump off, it's fine. If you're part of the coach community, you'll see these questions anyway, and you'll get an opportunity to kind of answer them. All right, so if anybody has to jump off, it's perfectly fine. The answers and the questions will be posted in the, well, you can always go back and watch the replay. So we're going to go through a few questions. I have a few case studies, but we might not be able to go through all of them. I'm just going to go through the first one and have that one record. Then I'm going to cut off the recording, but I'll share it with you guys because I just don't want this to be super long. All right, so let's go right here. I'm going to share my screen. And the first one is school disclosure and confidentiality. So I'm going to share the scenario. You're going to look at the questions. Just write down what you think the answers are. It is about 3 questions. There's a few of them for each case study. And I'll just keep moving as I go through. All right, so that's the first one. I'm going to give you guys about 2 minutes to read through it and answer the question. Then I'm going to start moving up. And if I move too quick and somebody needs me to go back and revisit question 2 or 3, just let me know. I'll do it after you guys finish this last one. All right. Anybody need to go back on 1, 2? You said yes? Okay. I saw somebody put up there that was waiting for me to say that. Go back to number 2. Go back to number 2. Let's see. All right. That is number 2. All right, only because I know some people are going to have to jump off, and I want to make sure they can at least know the answers to their questions. We'll do one case study at a time. So now that we did the first one, case study number 1, can anybody tell me what the answer to number 1 is? Got a lot of different ones, so I don't, depending on what state you in. The B sound like the C and the D, and the D sound like the B. They all sound alike to me. All right, I see a lot of people putting C. Tell the teacher that without a consent. A consigned consent. Okay, so everybody is saying C. Okay, 3 weeks ago, I had a lot of community questions. Something. All right, but I see some people. I see a lot of C's and B's. All right, Alicia, can you tell me why you picked your answer? Alicia, go ahead. I'm gonna let you pick why you picked your answer. Go ahead and break it down and explain it to us.
Well, my client is the 16-year-old, so she's telling me that there might be some concerns at home or somewhere else. So instead of giving out information, it's just ask the question to your client. Has anything been going on or anything? Because then that will give you more information before giving out their business.
Okay. So before we jump, because everybody is saying, tell the teacher that without a signed release information, no details can be shared, and they should contact the student's legal guardian. So a lot of you guys are in the school system too. So I don't really know if that's how y'all, I tell y'all to not focus on the school, but focus on the exam. But realistically, a teacher calls you and they're saying, hey, what's going on with this kid at home? They know obviously you're seeing the kid and they're like, they seem withdrawn. This is going on, And you're saying you're going to tell her, look, without a signed release, I can't tell you nothing is going on with that kid. You need to go ahead and call the parents. Cynthia is saying we're going to call the teacher back immediately and explain the concept of chosen family as a support system for the student.
Yeah, because you don't want to just assume that the child's family
It's who you think it is.
But it's saying you want to call it, so you're going to call the teacher back and say, look, do you know the concept of chosen family? Like, how do you know his parents are his parents? He might choose to someone else. Isn't that kind of leading into what, that he is a non-binary client or that he has some sexual orientation? Like, we got to be careful of what we jump and share on that note. Chastity, go ahead. I'm trying to see who has the best explanation for this one. That is the correct answer. Those that are getting the correct answer, I'm asking them to elaborate to see if it's making sense for those that didn't have the correct answer. So the correct answer is D. You want to contact the student first, assess first, and you want to you worked at MPS. I don't know if that's Norfolk Public Schools, Newport News Public Schools, or what, Nikki, but either way, you'll want to contact the student to assess for any previously undisclosed safety or any minority stress issues and reaffirm the limits of confidentiality. Like, hey, I know you didn't want me to share that you were blah, blah, blah. There's some concerns coming up, anything going at home, blah, blah, blah. Like, trying to get some information and some background first. You said non-public schools, yes, and that what we did first. You did what first, Nikki? I didn't even see your answer. I just saw you say you worked someplace. Assess, okay. Well, pretty much it doesn't matter what school. I think that's what throw people off. Okay, that makes sense after you talk it through, but not saying because it was the first question. I'm not saying that, but it is the first question. It's like the teacher told you this, and we're just going to be like, look, we're not sharing information. We don't even really know what's going on. Like, just because we meet with the kid, we don't know why they're withdrawn, what's happening. Like, maybe the parents found out something or somebody got hurt or killed. Like, we don't know anything. So we got to get some more data first and then go from there. All right, let's go on to the second one, the best question. What did you guys get for that? Kiana, what did you get for that one?
I got B.
B is in Bravo?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, Chastity said B is in Bravo too. I see a lot of B's. A few people said they didn't see D, but the answer is B. So yes, the answer is B is in Bravo. Good job, good job. Everybody's picking B, so I don't need to go through much into it. All right, and for the last one, C. Someone says C.
C.
C? Okay. Anybody feel, I see some D's in there. Anybody that feels like it's something else besides C is in Charlie and want to kind of explain what they got and why? No, everybody's gonna stick with C is in Charlie. All right, C is in Charlie is correct, so that's fine. I guess they look, I'm you recording this too. I'm not gonna be up here trying to fight that in, so I'm gonna let it be. Are you studying for the LCSW or LMSW exam? Don't waste time on the wrong prep. Try my test prep program for free with a full module that gives you the real strategies, the real practice, and real results. Plus, you get access to my exclusive test prep community where you'll find support, study material, and accountability. No risk, no stress, just results. Click the link in the bio so you can get ready to win with the winning team. All right, Gwen, go ahead. Let's for the next one. Are you able to stay on? Can you read the scenario and just answer the question for us?
Yes.
Yeah. All right, go ahead. We're going to do this one together. This one right here, the scenario. Go ahead.
The social worker observes the client's nonverbal cues and the partner's insistence. What is the social worker's first and most critical action based on the high yield exam traps list and the vulnerability populations glossary? A, allow the partner to interpret temporarily to build rapport. I need my glasses just a little bit.
It's fine. I just told you to read the thing. You didn't have to read the answer choice. You could have tapped out. Tan's laughing again. So go ahead, Tan. You read the answer choices for Miss Gwen since you laughing. Go ahead. That's right. We're gonna have her do it since she's laughing out loud.
All right.
Go ahead. You talking about something. All right. Yes, you were laughing. So go ahead. Out loud at that.
A, allow the partner to interpret temporarily to build rapport, as this aligns with the concept of chosen family. Am I looking at the right one? B, inform the partner that this is a private appointment and ask them to wait outside, then proceed with the session. C, thank the partner, but firmly explain that professional interpreters must be used for ethical and safety reasons and offer to reschedule with an interpreter present. And D, immediately call the police based on the potential indicators of human trafficking.
And what are you thinking?
C.
I would go with, can you go back up real quick? I didn't read it. I'm not gonna lie.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm having a whole conversation on mute. I was going to say, I'm sure Tan didn't read it. She was just reading it out loud for y'all, but she wasn't like processing it. So everybody yelled out C, and C is the correct answer. That's what I had this whole conversation to myself on mute. But now I'm unmuted so you guys can hear me. Go ahead, Kiana. You can go ahead. Anybody have a question about this one first before we move on?
This is from the other one. I'm sorry.
I can barely see it.
You can zoom in on your computer.
Okay.
Let me see. You guys, they taught me how to do it, but I know you can, but I'll just make it a little bit larger. Hopefully you can see it now.
Is it
Who
on the
wants to
phone?
read the next one? Go ahead. Who wants to read the professional interpreter is now present for the session. This is the next level. We got the professional interpreter. So go ahead. Someone read that question and tell us what the answer is.
I can read.
Uh-huh.
The professional interpreter is now present for the session. Applying the interpreter, use decision pad. What is the best technique for the social worker to ensure a smooth, accurate, and ethical session? Should I read the answers, the choices?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So A, speak directly to the interpreter using short, complex sentences to maintain the pace of the clinical interview. B, speak directly to the client in short sentences, periodically pausing to allow for interpretation and checking for the client's understanding and comfort. C, address all statements to the interpreter, asking them to relay the messages to the client and to interject with their own cultural observations, cultural humility. And D, ask the client to repeat the most sensitive statements back to the social worker to confirm the accuracy of the interpretation. Okay, let me see. A, right? Speak directly to the interpreter using short to maintain the pace for the clinical interview. No, sorry, B, we need to speak directly to the client.
Well, that's the main important part of the sentence. Don't skip that part. What does the sentence say? It says.
Yeah, sorry. I for a moment I blacked out. Yeah, it's B. Speak directly to the client. I used to do this. I forgot.
Yeah, because when you said when you said speak directly to the interpreter using short, and you saw complex and skipped it and said to maintain pace in clinical interview, I said no, that complex word is what made the sentence wrong.
Oh.
Absolutely. Okay, good job. Good job. The answer is B. And do I have a volunteer for the last question?
The client expresses a desire to leave the abuser, but states they can't because they are nowhere to go. They have nowhere to go and don't want to get their partner in trouble. What is the most appropriate next step that prioritizes safety, rule out, and aligns with the concept of harm reduction?
All right, people throwing the answers already. So we're going to focus the conversation on achieving total abstinence from the relationship before exploring resources. Or we're going to immediately refer the client for couples therapy to address the power imbalance. Or we're going to begin universal education about IPV and collaborate on a safety plan, focusing on risk reduction and connecting the client to a shelter or hotlines. Or we're going to contact the mandatory reporting line for elder and dependent adult abuse since the client is dependent on a partner. All right, everybody's saying C. We're going to use in universal education about IPV, and that is the correct answer. You guys got it. Good job. Good job. So I know we are way over time. I do have one more case study. I'm just going to share it. We don't have to go through the answers. This one's on microaggression, the system change. I'll show you guys quickly just the scenario and the questions up here. It'll also be posted in the chat, and I'll make sure I just add the answer key to all of these questions so you guys can have them. This is for all you that like to take pictures of the questions and do it. So when I post it tomorrow, whenever, you already got the answers down pat. But this one right here is a pretty good one, and it is, let me see. So you guys got that part. I mean, we can. It's up to you, Christina. It doesn't, I mean, as long as I'm off here by 6 o'clock, it doesn't matter. It just shortens people asking me questions. But we can definitely do the question if y'all have time. So if you have to jump off, we'll share it on the recording. You'll see it. But if not, we'll just go ahead and jump through. I'm just going to read it, and then you guys can tell me what, well, someone else can read it, and then we'll just go through the answers, give you guys an opportunity to answer the next 3 questions, and then we'll go from there. So anybody want to read it? I'll let somebody else read it, and then we'll kind of go through the answer.
I'll read it. A client who is gender and identifies as two-spirit person is checking in for an appointment. The front desk staff loudly calls out the client's former name, their naming, and incorrect pronouns, misgendering. Despite the client's afflicted information being clearly flagged in the chart, the client quickly retreats to the waiting room and appears distressed.
Thanks, Trudy. So she read the scenario to us, and now let's just go through the first answer. The first question says, the social worker in the area observes the interaction with the client's reaction according to the microaggression repair decision path. What is the social worker's first priority? Is it A, to immediately review the clinic's policy on heteronormativity with the front desk staff, B, publicly correct the front desk staff member and demand they apologize, C, approach the client, apologize succinctly for the staff's error and validate the impact of the microaggression on the client, Or D, update the client's file with a formal warning
D's out.
about the staff member's behavior. All right, and you guys are punching in the answer. I see a lot of different answers. Anybody want to share what they, well, I'm not going to say a lot of different answers. It looks like, let me see what the majority is here. C, approach the client, apologize succinctly for the staff's error, and validate the impact of the microaggression on the client. The answer is C. Is that what most of you guys are picking? But anybody see or think differently? All righty. So we are good to go. You guys are correct on that one. It is C as in Charlie. Let's move on to the second question. Okay, I guess you guys want me to read the second question too. Let me go down to it. And let's see, that was first one. Second one, after ensuring the client is safe and their session is proceeding, the social worker addresses the staff member and the system. To implement a lasting solution, what is the best action to prevent future incidents? In alignment with the FNBM steps for microaggression repair? Do we A, tell the staff member that they must pay more attention to the client's charts in the future? B, do we model the correct usage of the client's affirmed name and pronouns to the staff member and immediately update the digital chart to prevent the old name from appearing on intake printouts? C, do we complete a full assessment of the staff member's personal biases against non-binary people? Or do we D, tell the staff member the client has minority stress that makes them overly sensitive? I see you guys just throwing the answers in there. So is anyone think something different besides B as in Bravo? Nope. All right. So you guys got it. That is correct. Now remember also, guys, sometimes the questions can be really easy and obvious what the answer is, but you're learning from that question. So basically what I do when I see a question like that, not so much about, okay, that one makes the most sense, but I'm also looking at it and saying, okay, when this situation happens, if I get a test question and it's asking me about it, or if I see it in my studying, what I'm supposed to do is make sure that the firm name and pronouns are updated so they can use it. And you see how they said in the digital chart when I talked about the EMR system. So you want to make sure it's updated there, it's labeled. So normally in a lot of charts, you have like a cover page where you'll put important information for staff and whoever's working with the client that sticks out so they automatically know these are the things that you need to be aware of when you're engaging with the client in any shape, form, or fashion. And that's not a note. It's just certain details that stick out that you want to make sure everybody's aware of. All right, and the last question. Anybody want to read this one?
The social worker seeks systemic change, which aligns with the most level of intervention from the microaggression repair decision path. A, apologize again to the client and offer a discount on their next session. B, update the staff member's personal notes in the system. C, conduct a formal QI review of intake procedures and implement mandatory training on affirming care for all admin staff. Or D, ask the staff member to write a formal letter of apology to the client's chosen family. So this is going to go to C.
Absolutely. Yep, that is correct. So again, this is something for us to know, not so much about it being easy and it stuck out because that one was the meaty one and they gave a lot of context. So it's kind of like ding, 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 I'm it. Pick me. That's kind of what the answer choice was saying. But again, we understand the microaggression repair decision path. One, some of us probably never heard of that until today. And like, what the heck is that? So now, you know, when you're working with a client, there's certain things that you have to be aware of and kind of know. And one of them, these are the steps and different things that you would have to do. Good job, Alicia. Good job. So yeah, so those are some of the things you have to do. So of course, now that you guys have an understanding of this topic and we have reviewed it, obviously the next time we do questions or we go over there, there'll be a lot more, I'm not going to say challenging, but it's going to make you be like, oh my God, I'm not really sure. You're going to have to really know your information. So this is definitely something to be aware of.